Each October, we gather to acknowledge Domestic Violence Awareness Month. This year, we campaign together under the hashtag #UntilYouAreSafe. This theme acknowledges that there has been a significant statistical decline in both reported domestic violence cases and domestic homicides. During 2024, there have been 5,669 reported domestic violence cases. At the same time last year, there were 6,426 reported cases. And at the same time in 2022, there were 6,440 reported cases, all of which are too many, but I enjoy and love seeing it going down. These numbers are promising and inspire hope. And yet, despite this encouraging decline, there are still survivors living in danger. I am heartened to see a diversity of stakeholders here, unified by the common mission of ending domestic violence and advocating for survivors. I want to acknowledge many elected officials, law enforcement partners, and community leaders who are in attendance. Law enforcement plays a vital role in advocating for crime survivors and sowing the seeds of hope. Perhaps in no field of law enforcement is that truer than in the enforcement and prevention of domestic violence. For so long, domestic abuse was considered a familial issue. Today, we recognize it for what it is: inexcusable violence for which there must be accountability. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office commits to serve survivors of domestic violence first and foremost in a way that is victim-centered and trauma-informed. Our agency fundamentally believes that empowering survivors is as critical as bringing offenders to justice. And in this spirit, JSO created the Intimate Violence Enhanced Services Team, or INVEST. And INVEST was created as a multidisciplinary team to work intensively with families who are identified to be at greatest risk of severe injury or death due to domestic violence. INVEST team members receive police reports on acts of domestic violence that occur in Jacksonville. Likewise, INVEST members also receive referrals from domestic violence collaborative service agencies. INVEST team members consist of personnel from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, Hubbard House, and the City of Jacksonville. They provide enhanced response, intensive support, and strengthened follow-up investigation of high risk for fatality domestic violence cases. From October 2023 to September 2024, INVEST team members reviewed 9,123 reports of domestic violence. 656 of those reports were deemed to have a significant threat of lethality. All those 656 survivors were offered services, and of those, 107 survivors accepted INVEST services. The multidisciplinary wraparound services that INVEST offers are highly effective. Since the INVEST program's launch, there have been no reported domestic homicides or survivors who were or who have accepted services from INVEST. Additionally, to ensure our response to survivors is consistent with best practices, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office expanded survivor-centered education to all officers. Today, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office trains all patrol officers, not just investigators, who specialize in domestic violence, on trauma-informed victim interviewing. Patrol officers responding to calls for service are typically the first contact with law enforcement that survivors have. Officers who are educated on survivor trauma and the domestic violence cycle not only put together better investigations, they provide a stronger foundation for a survivor-centered journey through the criminal justice system. By holding domestic abusers accountable and linking survivors to services, we can reduce the threat of lethality. Holding abusers accountable is critically important to ending domestic violence. But as advocates, our officers will always prioritize the physical and emotional needs of survivors that we serve above all else. I'm proud that the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office partners with other organizations and agencies to work collaboratively to empower survivors and hold offenders accountable. Jacksonville is blessed to have the resource of Hubbard House. Without the committed advocates and service providers at Hubbard House, our agency simply could not support survivors of domestic violence in the holistic way necessary to end the cycle of violence. Likewise, without our partners at the State Attorney's Office who understand the potential lethality of domestic violence, we could not hold abusers accountable for their actions. I want all domestic violence survivors to know that our local law enforcement community recognizes your dignity and commits to stand with you throughout the criminal justice process. We strive to play an important role in your healing. Partnered together, survivors and law enforcement advocates will promote a culture of accountability that champions survivors. Today is a day of hope, but until all survivors are safe, our work continues. Now I'd like to introduce my friend, Jody Phillips.
Good morning. I'm pleased to be here today alongside our partner agencies showing commitment of the clerk's office to work hand in hand with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, the State Attorney's Office, and of course Hubbard House. We enjoy a fantastic partnership with each of these agencies and will continue to work with them every day to fill this critical need here in Jacksonville. It's only working together that we can address this issue head on. In the last year alone, our office has had over 6,500 domestic violence cases filed requesting protective injunctions, places us fourth in the state of Florida. That's a statistic that we don't like to share. And unfortunately, these are just the cases that were filed. Many cases go unreported. I truly believe that the over 1,000 statutory duties of the clerk's office, one of the most critical services we offer is support for survivors of domestic violence. We have an amazing and compassionate team in our domestic violence department who are with us today, and they work with survivors on a daily basis to help them complete their injunction petitions, as well as putting them in touch with resources in our community like those at Hubbard House. At the clerk's office, we're proud to support the mission of Hubbard House, and in addition to hosting several events throughout the year, donation drives, we're also committed to bring awareness to domestic violence. Later today, in a partnership with Hubbard House, I think for the 10th year running, we will place purple flags in the front lawn of the courthouse. And this is a visible reminder of domestic violence. As much as we like bringing awareness to it, we wish that we didn't have to place any flags in the front lawn. Finally, I'm proud to announce that we have a program which begins today called Hope Cards. Hope Cards is for any survivor issued a final injunction by the court. These cards contain detailed information about the respondent, as well as the petitioner's name, date of birth, and anyone who is protected under that order. These cards give law enforcement another tool to help verify and immediately make an arrest when there's a violation of a restraining order. These Hope Cards are available upon request and are completely free of charge and are available in all 67 counties. Finally, I would like to thank Dr. Patton and her team for their continued effort to stand alongside those who have been impacted by domestic violence.
Now the city's of Jacksonville's Domestic Violence Awareness Month proclamation will be delivered by Joe Enderhees, Deputy Chief of Staff for the City of Jacksonville. Joe.
Good morning, everyone. As the sheriff just said, I am Joe Enderhees. I am Mayor Deegan's Deputy Chief of Staff, and I'm honored to be with you on her behalf as we mark Domestic Violence Awareness Month. October is a time we set aside every year to put the spotlight on an issue that affects people and families across our city. It is crucial that we acknowledge the reality of domestic violence and the profound impact it has on survivors and their loved ones. Domestic violence knows no boundaries. It can affect anyone, regardless of age, gender, race, or socioeconomic status. It thrives in silence. It lives in the shadows. But today, we take a stand to break that silence. We are here to say, you are not alone, and there is help. There is help. You know, one of the first questions people normally ask when they learn that someone is in an abusive relationship is, why don't they just leave? Why don't they just leave? This simple question makes it seem like leaving is easy, when in fact, it is often complicated and dangerous. There are many reasons leaving an abusive relationship is not quick or simple to do. People in this situation face countless challenges when trying to leave. Why shouldn't we ask a victim, we shouldn't ask why a victim stays, because that puts the onus of change on the victim, where the responsibility of change belongs with the abuser. We should ask why the abuser chooses to abuse. We should ask why the abuser doesn't stop the violence and emotional manipulation. and we should look ourselves in the mirror. One of my favorite idioms is, if you permit it, you promote it. None of these relationships take place in a vacuum. The victims and the abusers are our neighbors and our friends. Our kids play with their kids. And we can all tell when something is off. We all can see it. So when we do, we have an obligation to say something. We must not permit it to continue. Mayor Deegan is strongly committed to ensuring that our city is a safe haven for all. We must work together to provide resources, support, and advocacy for survivors. This includes funding our shelters, our JSO outreach teams, our counseling services, and the education programs aimed at prevention. We must also engage the entire community in conversations about healthy relationships and respect. To anyone out there who is suffering in silence, we urge you to reach out. Help is available, and you deserve to live a life free from fear and violence. Together, we can create a culture of support and understanding where survivors are believed and empowered to reclaim their lives. Let us all pledge to be vigilant and proactive in combating domestic violence. By raising awareness, we can foster a community where love and respect flourishes and where everyone feels safe in their own home. Thank you for being here today and for your commitment to this vital cause. Let us continue to work together to make our city a safer place for all. And to that end, allow me to read the following proclamation. Whereas domestic violence is a pervasive issue that affects individuals in every community, with 1 in 3 women experiencing domestic violence in their lifetime. And whereas in Duval County alone, there are approximately 8,500 incidents of domestic violence reported each year, placing an immense burden on survivors who suffer from physical, financial, and psychological impacts. And whereas supporting survivors as they work to rebuild their lives is of the utmost importance, as it helps them regain their autonomy, sense of safety, and overall well-being. And whereas it is essential that perpetrators of domestic violence are held accountable in order to break the cycles of abuse and create healthier, safer communities. And whereas Hubbard House Incorporated, a beacon of hope in Jacksonville, provides life-saving resources and free services to more than 4,000 survivors of domestic violence annually, including both adults and children, with programs aimed at ensuring their safety and empowerment. And whereas the dedicated staff and volunteers of Hubbard House Incorporated play a critical role in supporting survivors, offering comprehensive services such as emergency shelter, counseling, advocacy, and education. And whereas during Domestic Violence Awareness Month, it is crucial that we, as a community, stand together to raise awareness, provide support to those affected, and work toward the prevention of domestic violence through education, outreach, and advocacy for healthy relationships. Now therefore, Donna Deegan, by virtue of the authority vested as Mayor of Jacksonville, Florida, do hereby proclaim October 2024 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Jacksonville, and encourages all citizens to join in recognizing the vital role Hubbard House, Inc. plays in serving vulnerable citizens and supporting the efforts to eliminate domestic violence, foster healthy relationships, and support those affected by this issue in our community. It is witnessed and signed by Mayor Deegan.
So on behalf of Duval County Domestic Violence Fatality Review Report, Assistant State Attorney Kerry Gaynor will speak next. Kerry?
Good morning. My name is Kerry Gaynor. I am the Director of the Special Victims Unit at the State Attorney's Office. This annual event highlights how our diverse and dedicated community work together as part of the Duval County Domestic Violence Fatality Review. At the State Attorney's Office, we have been fortunate to work with excellent partners that you see here today. They include Hubbard House, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, the Attorney General's Office, the Clerk of Courts and Family Court Services, the First Coast Child Protection Team, Jacksonville Area Legal Aid, the Battered Women's Justice Project, Jacksonville Safety First Jewish Family and Community Services, the Salvation Army, the United States Navy, and the University of North Florida as part of the annual Domestic Fatality Review. We collectively meet during the first half of the year to review and analyze adult domestic violence homicides within Duval County from the prior year, and the entire team provides findings and recommendations. This year, I have the honor to serve as both the chair and the meeting coordinator, and I assist with the group editing of each of the individual reports. Today, I would like to share with you some of our findings. This year, our team reviewed 10 cases of domestic homicide that included 13 homicide victims. 2 were determined to be justifiable homicide cases. Despite these statistics, there is hope. The number of homicide cases in 2023 was the lowest number since 2015. The number of homicide victims is the fewest since 2015 as well, with the exception of 2018, which saw the same number of victims. Additionally, the number of cases of intimate partner homicides matches the lowest number since 2015. Some of the patterns that we saw. Annual data from as far back as 1997 shows that the suspects were overwhelmingly male in those cases. However, that was not the case in 2023, where 63% of intimate partner domestic violence homicides were committed by women on men. Of those, 2 were deemed justifiable homicides when it was determined that the men were actively battering the suspects. Of the remaining cases for this year, for 2023, 50% were committed by women on men, 33% were committed by men on women, and 17% were committed by women on other women. As with previous years, firearms still remain the primary weapon in domestic violence homicides. This year's firearms were used in 60% of the cases. From the data since 1997, the trend is similar, as firearms accounted for 59% of domestic violences throughout that time period. Thus, abusers who have access to firearms remain a significant threat to their potential victims, and it is even more true now. Consequently, when domestic violence victims come forward, it is extremely important that lethality assessments and safety planning be thoroughly discussed. Of note, this year's domestic homicides, where the suspect and victim had a documented history of prior domestic violence between them, accounted for 88% of the cases we reviewed. In 4 of those 7 cases, the victim of the homicide had a documented or alleged history of domestic violence on the suspect. As I noted earlier, 2 of those homicides were ultimately ruled to be justified. Both victims of the justified homicides had a history of domestic violence on other parties as well. These statistics hit home for law enforcement and for prosecutors. As diligently as we work and as seriously as we take these offenses, there is always room to advance the cause of justice and to engage with victims of domestic violence, offering services, education, shelter, and whatever else is in our power before they become homicide victims. In 88% of the intimate partner domestic violence cases in 2023, the suspect and the victim were either actively living together or had previously lived together. In 71% of intimate partner domestic violence homicide cases, the suspect and the victim were actively living together at the time of the homicide. Of the intimate partner domestic violence homicide cases in 2023, 75% dealt with a dating relationship where the homicide suspect and the victim were either actively dating or estranged or had previously dated. As I stated at the outset, for 2023, we reviewed 10 cases. In 2022, our team of professionals reviewed 14 domestic homicide cases. And for 2021, we reviewed 17 cases. Although there is more to achieve, this is progress. Our motto at the State Attorney's Office is to pursue justice always. This year's theme of heal, hold, and center falls in line with that theme. We help survivors heal the abuse they sustain. We hold them with care while holding their abusers accountable for the crimes they commit. And through this, we center our efforts to end these dangerous and often deadly cycles once and for all. While we know the goal of achieving 0 domestic homicides may seem implausible, it is a meaningful effort in order to save lives. Members of law enforcement, the State Attorney's Office, and our community partners make that effort each and every day. But we cannot do this alone, and we need you, the community's help. We need your eyes, your ears, and your will to do the right thing. No one deserves to be abused. The public shove, slap, or harsh verbal abuse someone displays in public towards their partner might explode behind closed doors. If you see something, say something. Help us prevent something and someone from just becoming a statistic. Help that person by being their voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Kerry. Now, Dr. Gail Patton, CEO of Hubbard House Incorporated, will make some remarks. Doctor.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us here today. I stand alongside the leaders of our partner shelters, Kelly Franklin with the Betty Griffin Center and Julia Edwards with Quigley House. We also have the Micah's Place in Nassau County as well. And we do hope that today we can acknowledge with excitement, because we do see that hope that everyone has talked about today. Here in domestic violence as it relates to Duval County, last year there were fewer domestic violence fatality cases than we have seen in nearly a decade. Imagine that, in nearly a decade. This morning, we can stand here and say, fewer people are dying in our community because of domestic violence. That, my friends, is hope. That is hope walking and breathing and living among us. And I want to say thank you. Thank you to our amazing community. Everybody here, everybody in Duval County and the surrounding counties. When you ask someone you suspect is being abused if they need help, you may be saving a life. And that's evidenced by the fewer deaths we saw last year. When you tell a survivor domestic violence that you believe them and you support them, you may be saving a life. When you share information about Hubbard House Hotline and the hotlines of our partner organizations, you may be saving a life. We can't do this without you, without each and every one of you, so thank you. But the reality is, even one death because of domestic violence is one too many. And even one survivor in an abusive relationship feeling as if they will never be safe is one too many. It's with that spirit that we launched this year's Domestic Violence Awareness Month campaign, #UntilYouAreSafe. Please hear this, survivors, until you are safe. Because yes, we recognize our community for making real progress in reducing lethal domestic violence, but there is still more work to do. To anyone living in abuse right now, until you are safe, and I can't say it enough times, until you are safe, we are here for you. Through this month, we will share on social media what exactly that commitment means, because safety looks different for each survivor. For some, safety is leaving the abuse. For some, safety is an ongoing plan even after you're out of the relationship. For some, safety is hard to define. Survivor, whatever safety looks like for you, and whatever the journey to achieve that involves, we are here until you are safe. I encourage you, our community, to be a part of this campaign by sharing our social media posts throughout the month. You never know who may see what you share, who may reach out for support, whose life you may help save. Your support means that every survivor in Baker County, Clay County, Nassau County, St. Johns County, and right here in Duval County knows that they are not alone because of you. And that message, it cannot be overstated, because that journey to safety truly can be scary and dangerous one. It's one that most of us really can't fully comprehend. That's why I'm honored to welcome Heather, a survivor. Heather escaped a lethal situation to find not only safety, but joy for herself and her boys. Her bright spirit and strength should serve as an inspiration to not only us, but to survivors who may be listening. Heather?
I am Heather, and my story is a testament of human resilience. For over 5 years, because of abuse, I faced challenges that no one should ever endure. It was only upon taking the courageous step to free myself and my children that I realized the full extent of what I lived through. My tale started innocently. I had met my ex in high school here in Jacksonville through a mutual friend. Well, we lost touch. We reunited a few years later, and within about 2 months, we were in a relationship. I was excited about the reunion, but it quickly turned into a nightmare. He started hurting me when I became pregnant with his child. I miscarried because of the abuse. Unfortunately, not the only miscarriage I would endure through his abuse. And it didn't stop there. He inflicted profound emotional wounds in addition to the physical harm. My abuser belittled me, casting insults and deeming me unworthy of love, subjecting me to physical confinement and verbal assaults in isolation. One of the most severe incidents I remember was when he strangled me. I remember it like yesterday. I had been trying to keep my boys safe and away from him because he was in the bedroom. And I could tell he was in a bad mood. When my youngest started to head over there, I encouraged him instead to come to me to sit down and watch TV with me. Before I knew it, my abuser rushed at me past my son and grabbed me by my throat with both hands. He screamed at me. His hands got tighter as he continued to scream. I tried banging on the wall because I'd come up with a signal with my neighbors to know I needed help, but I couldn't get there. Instead, all I could hear were the cries and the screams from my boys, wanting their dad to stop. What I remember most is the look on his face. Pure rage. His eyes were black, and I knew this was it. This could be the moment that he killed me. So I prayed. I asked God to protect my boys. If these were my last moments, I prayed they wouldn't suffer like I had. And in that moment, my knee dislocated, taking us both to the ground. But he kept his hands tight. He kept going, and then just as suddenly as that had started on, he stopped. He looked at my boys as they ran to hug me tight and told them I got what I deserved. I pleaded for an ambulance, but he had my phone. He drilled the story he wanted me to tell, that I dislocated my knee by tripping, that the bruising was from a fall. Over an hour later, he finally let me get the call for medical help. There were times when I considered suicide as an escape from the living nightmare. I despised myself and blamed myself because I felt like I allowed this to happen. Only later did I learn he conditioned me to do that. Throughout this relationship, my abuser took everything from me. Even my sense of self, of who I was. I stopped wearing makeup, dressing up, and caring altogether. I existed in a state of darkness and fear. However, in the midst of this darkness, my sons were my guiding light, leading me towards hope. Being for them and being there is the motivation that kept me going and that ultimately helped me find safety for us. That journey to liberation was fraught with challenges, overwhelming fear, a shattered sense of self-worth, and feelings of insignificance. But the moment I chose to leave marked that start to a new chapter in my life, one where I began to rebuild, to feel safe, and to rediscover my identity. And most importantly, I found my voice once more. We had moved to Maine. When I left him, I came back to Jacksonville. Hubbard House supported my ability to set up a safe home for me and my boys. They provided vouchers to shop at the thrift store, helping me clothe my sons, and provided me furniture to set up our first apartment. It may seem like a small part of our journey to a safe new life, but for me, this was everything. And once we were in that apartment in safety, I found myself. That first Christmas of freedom, I purchased a purple tree, simply because I had the freedom to do it. Over the past 12 years, since reclaiming my freedom, I have fully discovered my voice and embarked on the healing journey. Like many survivors of domestic violence, I had convinced myself that I wasn't being abused and that it was my fault. I was mistaken. There are challenging days and moments when I must reassure myself that I am all right. But overall, these years have seen me grow beyond my abuse, learn of my strength, and realize my self-worth. I've witnessed my boys mature into remarkable young men, soon to be 16 and 15. I've become an author, sharing my story of abuse to aid others. I have built a wonderful support network for myself and my boys. Without them, and God's help, I often wonder where I'd be today. But fortunately, I am here. My story is one of bravery, serving as a testament that's never too late to pursue a better life, and that once reclaimed, one's voice can resonate with the strength of endurance and optimism. I share my story because now I have found my voice, and I hope survivors hear they are not alone. I know my voice will encourage survivors to find safety, and I celebrate because my voice is my freedom.
Heather, thank you for your strength, your courage, and for being here today. It's a very, very impactful story, and we appreciate you taking the time. I want to thank you all for attending this recognition of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Today's event evidences how many community leaders and advocates we have in Jacksonville who are passionately committed to supporting survivors and ending intimate partner violence. On behalf of all of us in law enforcement and in support services, I want survivors to know that we stand with you. While this Awareness Month occurs only once a year, our pledge to empower and protect you is our daily commitment. Today is a day of hope. Now, I and the other speakers are happy to take any questions that you may have, and thank you so much for coming. Any questions? Thank you very much. Gail, thank you.